Hello, everyone. It is February 26th at 7:30 p.m. EST, and you're watching the DOVECOTE episode 17 with Natalie from Luck of the Harbor. Natalie, say hi.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie Putum. I am a game designer. I have a game funding right now called Warren Guard, and I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah. Let me. I'm gonna remember to put in the birds this time. We're bringing in intro, the interview bird, beautiful wide bird, um, and yeah, I guess I'll start with the let's as early as possible let you give the pitch for Warren Guard, just so folks who might be interested can grab it and also throw that into the chat.
Yeah, Warren Guard is a game about dragon riders, but secretly it's a game about found family and like the attachments you build with people when you have to risk your lives together. Um, it is a combination of belonging outside belonging and fate. It uses a like combined engine where your rider controls in a diceless token economy like belonging outside belonging, but when you get on the back of your dragon, everything changes and you're suddenly out of full control. Um, it is very much about the bonds we build with people. We've got an amazing team on it, and somehow we hit 200% funding in 28 hours.
It's really
And we are
impressive.
we climbed through all of our stretch goals in the first 48 hours. And I am so excited to announce more stretch goals tonight.
Yeah, you've given me the privilege of announcing some exclusives on the show, which I think is the
Yeah.
first Dovecode exclusive, which is
Okay.
Uh,
I'm super excited about it.
do you want to go through those now or save those for later?
Oh, should we make them wait? I think we should make them wait. I know Kay is in chat, my friend Kay, who is a big supporter of the game, who is dying to know what they are. So I think we make them wait.
Okay. Well, I would love, uh, beyond just kind of knowing about this game, which looks really great. Like I watched an interview that you and some other folks from the game were on, and
Mhm.
it sounds like a very good combination of like things that I personally really like in TTRPGs. It's got, as you mentioned, you got the BOB style tokens, you got the Fate style, like adjective combat, uh,
Mhm.
and then also my understanding, like some kind of Yuzeba style chapters, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. They're not as in depth as Zaba's. They're not going to fully change your rules of the game, but they're going to set up these slice of life segments in different ways by asking like challenging questions to the group and putting everyone in interesting situations to start a session.
Cool. Did that kind of come from reading Yuzebas, or was that kind of in the game before you had
That
read it?
absolutely came from reading Gizeba's. I was lucky enough to actually do a Gizeba's actual play back when Gizeba's was in crowdfunding on Carrion Comfort. We did something like 15 episodes of Gizeba's Bed and Breakfast, and I just adore that game. Yeah.
I am also a big Yuzebas head. I think it's rather good. I'm gonna turn
Yes.
myself slightly. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
looking at the audience.
Yeah,
There we go.
Yezeba's Bed and Breakfast is a good game, is one of the many, very obvious statements we'll make, in this, interview, I'm sure.
Yeah. Kind of. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about Warren Guard throughout because it is your current like thing that you were selling. But
Yes.
I know like those of you who watched last week, Jay was talking about like it can be exhausting to talk about just the thing that you're making right now or the thing that you're trying to sell right now. Um,
Right.
and so I invite you if you'd like to. I'd love to hear about like what has kind of been your design history before Warren Guard.
So my design history actually started with a game called Sapphic Space Pirates. Sapphic Space Pirates was in the works for a long time. That game took me about 8 years to write, and it's a zine, by the time it came out. Um but I was originally writing a game that I was trying to write a game that was for everyone, and when the pandemic kicked off and I was, stuck at home, it finally clicked that I should just write the game that I wanted to write instead of trying to write a game that pleased everyone. I should write the explicitly queer game for me, and other people will hopefully like it. Um, so that was my first game, uh, and it did incredibly well. Beyond that, I've done a lot of. I wrote a Monster Hearts 2 playbook called The Snake, which is based on the music of Taylor Swift. And then Warren Guard is my first large project.
Hell yeah. I'm kind of curious. Like, uh, it seems. I guess like I'm very impressed that like having one larger project behind you and then a playbook like um were you expecting like this much success from Warren Guard? Like, what sort of measures did you make to kind of allow it to be so?
I was not expecting this kind of success. My art director, Abby Kelly, who was fantastic, was the whole time like, "Oh no, we're gonna fund at ridiculous levels. Don't worry about it." And I was like, "You're just being optimistic." We put up with a 5,000 goal, and I was like, "Oh, if we hit 10,000, that will pay for all the art we want. Like, we won't have to worry about it." And then we beat that, and um, it's immensely humbling as the first time going up on crowdfunding and being such a novice game designer that people are putting their faith in it. And I really chalk that up to having an excellent playtest community, really more than anything. Um, this is not the question you asked, but it's really what I chalk Warren Guard's success up to is I've built Jay Dragon wrote a really excellent article on building a playtest community, and I had done that by accident without reading Jay's article. And that community, some of whom are in chat, we have Kay and Silent Infinity both in chat. Um, both They were cheerleaders for the game. They played it, they loved it, and they've been evangelists for it from the first moment. And seeing that support from the community that built around this game has been just amazing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I think I I don't know how well my Sapphic World is going to do when I put it out there. But like, I think that there is a lot to be said for like a really great playtest community.
Mhm.
So much so that like I'm I mentioned it. A tweet that I made is in that J article.
Yes.
um, but yeah, I like I'm glad to hear that that's kind of where it came from. That it came from like that natural place of people, people playing it and liking it. Because like that, uh, you know, it's good to know that it's good to know that like good games are being supported. I guess like
It
good games by
it
trans
is.
creators.
Because I will say, like, going into this launch, like, I was so afraid because I was like, man, I made a press kit and like no one picked up my press kit besides Silent Infinity, who's in chat and is a writer. That just happened to be part of my playtest community. And I was like, man, no one picked up my press kit. Like, and I see, what's the karaoke game that just hit its
Oh
goal and was
yeah,
great? That Dicebreaker called one of their top 10 games of anticipated games. I was like, man, if only I could be that lucky. And uh, um,
here you are.
yeah, and now here I am somehow. Uh, yeah.
Very cool. Um, yeah, I guess I'll kind of go into my more normal suite of questions. Um, just it's very exciting to see that you're doing so well with this.
Mhm.
Um, but I guess I'll ask first. Um, is there anything that you're working on now? Like, are you working on anything while you're kind of promoting and funding for Warren Guard?
I'm working. I've been tweaking with. I play a lot of Monster Hearts 2. That's where a lot of my community came from. Is I'm part of a Monster Hearts 2 fan server, where we just play a lot of Monster Hearts. and I'm currently working on another skin called the Townie, which is about being bound to your town, and your town having this pull that lets you not able to leave it, which I think really ties into Monster Hearts making what's normal as a teen feel monstrous, which is, you can't escape your town, it feels like as a teen.
Yeah, that
Um,
rules. That sounds awesome.
and then I'm currently so Warren Guard. I've told this anecdote on a lot of streams, but this is the first time I'm ending the anecdote on a cool place. Warren Guard started with me working on a game based on the book series Animorphs. Were you an Animorphs reader as a growing up?
I was not, but I know that there are a lot of like transformation heads in my chat,
Yes,
so
yes. So Animorphs was a huge touch point for me growing up. And Warren Guard started with me experimenting with that, but I just found I was kind of experimenting with games where I could layer different mechanics on top of each other and um, have one mechanic inform the other, but then be separate. And I did that, and I said, "This feels." When I played it, and I like ran a playtest, it felt more like you were riding something than controlling something. And so that's how it came to being a game about dragon riders, which I also love the Dragon Riders of Pern books growing up. Uh, but recently, I was writing an article telling this anecdote, and uh, it clicked for me how to solve that problem and to write the Animorphs game.
Mhm.
So I've been toying around with that idea too. I've just got like a few like Google Docs open where I've been like writing some very loose ideas. So that might be the next project is my Animorphs game.
Yeah, that's such a fun like the way that like TTRPGs kind of cycle in that way.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't I'm trying to think of any anecdotes that aren't just me, but like
No, tell your anecdotes. I'm
um
super interested in all your games too.
yeah, well, because Sapphic World was like at first just like, what if a PBTA game had like a Nordic LARP style like three element class system, and then like
Mhm.
all the classes were just like extremely fucking horny, and then I was like, actually, I'm too autistic and depressed to like. Well, not depressed, sad to sustain this in a way that doesn't just like immediately get really weird and mythological and like drippy. And
Uh-huh.
so now, like, 2 years into writing Sapphic World, I'm like, what if I just made like a really like simple game called Masters of Wife that's like
Uh-huh.
interested in like peace and forgiveness and intimacy in the ways that like Gubat Banwa and like uh, 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 kill 6 billion demons are interested in violence.
Right.
And like you just kind of wrap back around on these things. I feel like, and it's fun.
Yeah, I love it when it's clear writers are working through something in their TTRPGs, like they're about a specific experience. Like Sapphic Space Pirates is a game about lesbian space pirates, but really it's a game about my roller derby team when I played roller derby,
Hmm.
and like about those relationships and what that queer specific queer community was like. And so like hearing like you're working on games that are about the specific mood in your life is so cool.
Yeah, I read there's this game developer named Oleander Garden who makes like weird transgender immersive sims, I guess you could
Mhm.
describe it. And she's been getting into TTRPGs recently, and I've been following this. And um, she made this game that she released today, which is what is it? It's Against the Apocalypse.
Okay.
Um, and it is it calls itself an anti-narrative. I'm actually going to post it. It's an anti-narrative RPG that um, it's free. I recommend people look at it. Not to spoil too much about it, but it has like 16 separate indexes of just like formulas for how guns fire, like the speed at which a bullet flies, and like how long it takes for a normal person to do something. Um, and it's like, oh, you read Apocalypse World, and you got mad at some elements of it. um, or you read Apocalypse World and you loved it, and
Yeah,
this is how you're expressing that love. Um, I guess my point being like I love when it's just so clear like this is where this is coming from. This is the focus and inspiration of this work. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, totally agreed on that front. Um,
This
with
game
that,
looks sweet. I'm super excited to read this when I'm not on stream and needing to pay attention.
it's kind of awesome. I don't think I could ever play it, but it's really cool. I just wanted to direct people to that as well because I read it today and was insane about it. um, yeah, with that in mind, speaking of which, are there any games that you've been reading or playing recently that you would like to direct folks to, or just kind of talk about?
I yeah, honestly, like a game that I've been reading a lot because I've been really wanting to run it and finding the right group to run it has been hard. Um, is Apocalypse World Burned Over?
Hmm.
Have you read the specific Burned Over modification to Apocalypse World?
I've skimmed it. I really need to give it a more thorough
It is just
look.
it is what made me back when because for a little while I was exploring PBTA back when I was writing Warren Guard, and it is the game that made me realize that PBTA wasn't the right system for me. It's like so well written that it's the baker's, I think, purest expression of what PBTA is and isn't. That it it's like a lesson in PBTA design. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, it's an interesting like. I remember when I skimmed through it, the thing that and also just like from like conversations with people about it, um, the thing that I think hits me about it is like uh I'm gonna try to say this in the most slash neutral way possible because like
yeah, please,
I know that as the person who makes horny games, I
yes,
people might think that I'm like jealous or mad about this, but I think this is actually like genuinely so valid of them to do this.
uh huh,
As they describe it, the making it more suitable for play across wider age groups and more general audiences with no sex moves, a more reined in take on violence and less adult horror and the grotesquerie. Um, I I like sex moves, absurd violence,
yes,
and adult horror and the grotesquerie. But I understand why, as like growing adults who I imagine are you know working more and more with all ages groups, I can really imagine being like, hey, this is our big game. We should probably not have gay sex in this, or
yeah.
straight sex even.
Right. Well, honestly, another Warren Guard anecdote, back to promote my own stuff,
Yes.
is people kept describing Warren Guard as queer. And I'm a queer writer, and I'm not
Mm.
saying the game isn't queer, but I didn't write it intentionally as queer. This was my like shot at like I'm gonna make a game that's for everyone. Everyone's gonna love Warren Guard. And then my playtesters kept being like, "Oh yeah, this queer game," and I was like, "Oh, I just can't help it." Like I write explicitly queer because I am explicitly queer and I can't stop myself. Um, but yeah, I think that even with the sex moves and like explicit violence removed from Burned Over, like I think I don't know.
You have a heart of
There's
gold.
something about
Let
like a
them
game
take it from
saying
you.
that this game is not about that that makes you focus on that. It's something Jay did in Wander Home that I think about a lot. The veterans move where the veteran has a sword and they must not draw their sword, and if they have the move sitting on their sheet, like you can kill someone at any time.
Yeah, this is
Um,
like the single most discussed. I'm saying this in
right.
like a slash positive way.
Yeah.
Single most
Yeah.
discussed element of Waterhome, right?
Right. Yeah. And like when I wrote Warren Guard, like I one of the things you can choose for your Warren Guard's traits are that it has rules against romance, which is really saying I want this game to have romance.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that like spelling out those explicit like denial things can sometimes because like I said, I play a lot of Monster Hearts and sometimes the sex moves, like it's like, okay, like this game is about sex and like mechanicizing it almost makes it less about the sex in ways sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
I should also be clear. Like, this is not a
Mm.
this is not a full throated critique of
Yes.
Burned Over. This is
Yeah.
me explaining why when I first skimmed it, I was a little like not even squicked, just kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, interesting.
Yeah. And like I totally get it. Like they were like, we want to play Apocalypse World with our kids, and we
Mhm.
don't want to play games with sex moves with our kids. Like totally good on you.
Yeah,
uh, yeah.
yeah. And any other games that you're playing or looking at recently?
I'm drawing a blank. I read so many games, and right now, another game I want to call out that didn't get a lot of people looking at it and isn't currently available, and I'm actually working on changing that, is a game called Ace Adventure by a writer named Brian LaBerge.
Oh.
Ace Adventure is a Fate accelerated game that is um, about a time traveling fighter pilot who ends up in World War I and accidentally rediverts history to make it queerer and less racist. And you fight giant monsters as a group of madcap fighter pilot mad scientists. Uh, and it's explicitly like a queer punk game. And it is so good. And I'm actually working. So Brian, unfortunately, uh, due to some budgeting issues, wasn't able to fully fulfill the Kickstarter.
Mhm.
But I will another exclusive here that I haven't talked about. I'm working with Brian to hopefully finish fulfilling that Kickstarter and publishing it on itch so that it's available to everyone because it was such an inspiration for Warren Guard.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
so I really want to make that game available to more players.
That rules. That's very very cool. I think
Yeah.
that's very admirable of you. Um,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, and Brian is one of Brian runs, if you're on the East Coast, you might know Brian from running Games on Demand at PAX Unplugged and
Oh
PAX
yeah.
East, um, which the Games on Demand is like a huge. I live at Games on Demand at those cons, and that's where I built a lot of my playtest community and where I run most of my playtests is at Games on Demand. So huge plug for Games on Demand. At those cons, at Big Bad Con. They run it at Gen Con. I'm not close to the people who run it at Gen Con, but yeah, Games on Demand is super awesome. And if you're a budding game designer and you want to get butts and seats to play your game that are enthusiastic to be playing it, Games on Demand is the place to go.
Yeah, that's definitely a goal for next PAX U for myself is
Y-
getting in games on demand and
Yeah,
run some
I
stuff.
can put you in touch with people. Just let me know after stream, and I will get you in the Discord for that.
Hell yeah, I would very much appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, are there any games coming up? Any games funding or kind of in development that you're excited about?
Yeah, I got 3 games for you. The first one, uh, Interstitial 2E.
Yes, fuck.
Interstitial 1 was a game with a lot of heart, but some like, mechanical issues. And I'm so excited they're revisiting that system to kind of clear up the mechanical issues, but keep the heart of that game.
Mhm.
I was lucky enough to be on an actual play of Interstitial 1E that was a Kingdom Hearts game where I played Hela from Marvel Universe, uh,
That's awesome.
uh, and that was super fun. Um, and yeah, I'm super excited about Interstitial 2E coming out. Oh, there's this little game called Biotrophication that I'm super excited to play. I keep describing it to people, and they give me. I actually, I should take that back. I keep describing it to straight people who give me a weird look when I describe it to them, which has been super fun. Uh,
Yeah,
um,
I really appreciate that. In fact, hang on, I'm gonna here. I'm gonna be even-handed. I'm gonna do Interstitial 2E Kickstarter first, and then I'll post
okay,
Biotrophication.
yeah,
Yeah, please
uh,
contribute to both of these.
yeah. Biotrification was my secret bonus one because my brain, uh, forgot it. What is the name of that game that I just backed? This is hold on, I'm checking my it's on.
Interstitial was one of my first like indie RPGs that I played, so
Oh,
yeah. I'm waiting for
that's
that
right.
biotrification money to come in so that I can support Interstitial 2.
Yeah, yeah, it looks really cool. Um, uh, where is that freaking game? You know what? I saw it on Rascal. Let me just go look at Rascal's news site, and I will tell you the name of the game that has fallen out of my head.
Cool.
Which Biotrification is up on Rascal too
It
now.
is. I put it up there.
Uh,
We'll
yeah,
talk about that in the news section, but I'm
yeah.
very excited about Rascal.
Oh, here it is. Ritual Magic for Besties,
Oh.
which is a GM-less tarot-based game about covens casting magic. And it's about you like the game whole zine looks like a scrapbook. And the game you play with tarot cards, and as you're doing this ritual, you're building out your relationship with each other and like building your relationship as a coven. It's by Ratwave Gamehouse, who also designed Transgender Deathmatch Legend, which is a game I definitely need to check out.
Yeah, I think previous guest on the show, I was trying to remember why I recognized the art. Uh, Zygmunt Thotep has been putting some stuff about that on YouTube, so that's cool. Um, cool. Let me see where we are temporally. Um, okay. Immediately want to play Rich. Yeah, it looks really good. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. Do
and
we
then
wanna? Oh, sorry.
the last game I want to talk about was I got a chance to play Jay Dragon's new game
Oh my fucking god.
that Jay talked about last week, and uh, Seven Part Pact. And Seven Part Pact is I mean, it's still very early in playtest, but again, another game from Jay that's going to change the way we look at role playing games and what they can do. Uh, so I'm super excited about that.
I love Seven Part Pact. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna soften out something. I am going to be doing an AP of Seven Part Pact with I'll say Jay for now. I'll reveal more of the people, but like some really fucking cool, uh, all trans cast, very cool people.
Oh,
So
that
keep an
is
eye out
so
for that,
cool.
and that'll
I'm
be
so
on here.
excited to see how that plays in an actual play. Like, I'm perplexed and excited.
It's gonna be silly. Um,
Ah,
and we're gonna have some beautifully designed art by a previous guest on the show, Wendy Ribston, for that, which will be awesome. Um,
speaking of announcements, why don't we show off my stretch goals really quick before?
yes, absolutely.
Uh,
I assume you want to do the lower one first.
yeah, we'll do the lower one first.
Okay, so as a reminder, Warren Guard is currently at. Oh, that's not the. Nope, that is the same page. Okay, Warren Guard is currently at 11,505.
Uh
Um,
huh.
would you like to tell us about this first uh, stretch goal?
Yeah, so Shan Benion, if you've seen there's art of a room in the Warren where there's a bunch of dragon riders around, like sharing stories, and there's a dragon napping in the corner. I've been calling it like the key art for the game. It's what we've been using in all the ads and all the Twitter promo. Shan Benion is an excellent artist, and we are going to have Shan Benion draw some landscapes and then do postcards from the world of Warengard with these landscapes on, and that will be free for all physical backers. So all physical backers are going to get these gorgeous pieces of art that will not only be in the game, but will be in postcard form. So you can send it to someone, so you can put it up on your wall or on your fridge, or use as a bookmark or whatever you want to do with it. Uh, it will be um, Yeah, it's something I'm excited to own, and I'm excited for everyone to get.
That's fucking awesome. That's
Yeah,
really cool. Um, very very cool backer award.
yeah.
It's always nice when like you back something. And it's like, hey, by the way, you're getting this other physical thing that we decided you're getting. Um,
Uh-huh.
it's good.
Yeah,
And then second one.
yeah. So at $20,000, Jay Dragon, who we've been just singing the praises of all episode, who was a guest here last week, is going to write a new rider archetype. And that's so exciting because the rider archetypes are so based on Wanderhome that getting Jay in to write a new writer archetype is just like I asked Jay and I was like, "There's no way Jay's gonna say yes. Like, there's not a chance." And then Jay was like, "Yeah, absolutely," and I was blown away. So at $20,000, we're gonna have Jay Dragon writing a new writer archetype.
Yeah. Yes, as Grief says, Jay Dragon, known guest of the Dovecote, and also did some other stuff.
Yes.
This is the Hershey Park tour guide. Uh, he was born. He made some chocolate, and then he died of
Yeah.
of TTRPGs. And I'm going to be doing this to everyone who is on the Dovecote. You know, Jeff Stormer, a known Dovecote guest. Natalie, known Dovecote guest.
Yes.
Um, yeah. Speaking of, I guess specifically speaking of Jeff Stormer, although that's not our
Yeah.
first
Let's hop
story,
to news.
we could actually, you know what? Fuck it, we're flipping things around. We're gonna talk about Jeff first. Um,
Okay, excellent.
so, first of all, we're gonna move on to the news. Uh, Cordis, the news bird, coming in from a beautiful volcano hike, um, up in the mountains. It's a non-active volcano, quiet, peaceful, calm of mind, and just a joyous little bird. Um, yeah. Uh, so we're gonna start with this story. Um, Party of One, which I am an occasional listener to, and also have been on, which is Jeff Stormer's podcast, where Jeff plays through a bunch of or plays a bunch of TTRPGs with usually one person, sometimes more. Um, has hit its 400th episode, which is really cool. Uh, it is the my understanding is this is the most TTRPGs anyone has played on an AP ever. It's a very impressive accomplishment. I'm just gonna really quickly do some tab navigation. Okay, it's a really impressive accomplishment. Um, less than 400 TTRPGs because there's some repeats. There's a couple of episodes with Jess Levine. There's a couple episodes. Uh, there's a couple of these Abe's episodes, for example. Um, but yeah, congrats to Jeff.
Yeah, it's such an accomplishment. And Jeff is such an excellent human. Like you've gotten to be on I haven't gotten to be on Party of One yet, but I've gotten to hang out with Jeff and Jeff is just great.
Yeah, I think it's notable that like not only does Jeff create like a great show and like a great product, Jeff is um broadly involved in the TTRPG scene, makes games himself, like made those for the Mask, um, and also I think on some level, Party of One is a service to indie and kind of mid-scale TTRPG designers and developers who are looking to test and show off their games in whatever state they're in. Um, and it's good. And I think like if you have a game that you think Jeff will be into, you should submit that submit that because I know Jeff's always looking for more guests. And if you're like a person with a lot of money and social clout, you should go on Jeff's show and
Hmm.
answer his emails. um, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this?
Have you gotten to listen to the 400th episode
I
yet?
have. Oh, that's a crucial element to this. Is that
Yeah.
this 400th episode is fucking banger.
Yeah, it's such a cool like art piece. Like I hope someday I can have created something that widely spanning that I get to revisit it with like that much love. Um yeah, it's just such a cool thing to exist.
Yeah, so Jeff played Project Echo, which is a TTRPG where you use a year planner, um, to fight an anomalous temporal entity. Um, but instead of using a year planner, Jeff used all 400 episodes, or I guess 399 episodes of Party of One, um, and like it's great because it's like it'll be like a little clip of an episode, and then it'll be like, I'm here, like Jeff is here, and he needs to figure out how to like get to the next place or find something here, or kind of deal with the entity here. Highly recommend listening to this. In fact, I'm gonna put this in the Twitch chat. I'll also put this in my server's stream chat just because it's it's like a what 3 hour episode.
Yeah.
Or wait, that's not even remotely true. 1.5
No,
hour episode.
no, it felt long. Like a lot happens in that episode.
Yeah,
Like I didn't feel long in that it's a draw. It feels long that a lot happened, but
yeah. Also, Jeff is involved in Minnesota Web Fest, which is a really great AP oriented web web festival. Um,
I don't know about that. That's new to me.
yeah, it's very cool. I've been learning more about it this year. But yeah, it's Jeff is involved in a lot of neat things. Congratulations, Jeff, and I think that's all I really have to say about that.
Yeah, congratulations, Jeff.
Yeah. I guess we'll go. Oh boy. Do you want to do the rough one or do you want to do the the less
Let's do
rough
the
one?
rough. Let's sandwich the rough news with two good pieces.
That's a wonderful idea. Okay. I'm also just gonna really quickly rearrange the way that I have this set up. Okay. So, uh, this is a rough one. Um, every week it feels like on some level the Dovecote has to return to this subject in one way or another, because there's currently a genocide going on in Palestine, um, and yeah, this story is very disappointing and upsetting. Um, Esther, who ran the Games for Gaza Itch bundle last fall, has written a thread about how medical aid for Palestinians has not received $365,000 from the HIO bundle, and HIO has been ghosting them regarding the transfer of funds. Um, Esther goes into more detail here, if you'd like to read it yourself, but the essential element of it is, people could have gotten aid and care through this money. It's a lot of fucking money, right? Um,
Yeah.
and they might have not because itch.io has decided not to spread that money around. There is some good news, which is that Leaf, who's the creator of itch.io, is aware of this. They were supposed to get the charity onboarded, but nothing seems to have happened, and there's no update since. So hopefully this gets resolved, but it's a rough situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's the obvious thing that a lot of people have pointed out that itch.io is bad at getting like individual creators their $30.
Hmm.
Never mind moving almost half a million. But there's still no excuse for it. And it's rough that itch.io is kind of the only current platform for these very small indie TTRPGs, and it makes me wish there was some more competition, but I'm not certainly the person who can build that. So
Yeah. Um, I it's a difficult one. Like I mean, it's not really difficult. They should have figured out the money situation. Um,
right,
but it does suck to see that um, not only is this happening, on the lower scale, but it's also happening on this like much larger scale. Um, and hopefully this gets resolved. But I'm like curious what fixing the broader problem would look like. Besides what you said, like kind of moving on to a different platform for TTRPGs.
Right. But any platform that is able to like move money in those sort of quantities, like, needs backing, and it's the same $5 moving all around the TTRPG scene.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that happens, but I for one would like to see it happen. If there's someone who is waiting for, I wonder if Natalie would like this. You have my thumbs up to come up with a competitor to itch.io.
See that there are people waiting in the wings. There are people with millions of dollars waiting in the wings, and they've just been
Yeah,
waiting for the thumbs up from you.
yeah,
And now
yeah.
everything will be fine. Um, but yeah, I'm hopeful that that shifts. I guess we should get to our. Actually, maybe we take a break first and then get to our larger story.
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool. So we'll take 5 and we'll be back in a little bit. Be right back. Wait, hang on this one. Hi everyone. Oh shit, that's my fucking notes. it's, it's fine. It's fine. Listen, they're not that much different from what I'm gonna say on stream. Uh, Sometimes that happens. Listen, folks. Um, we're blocked by what? What D&D priest? Oh wait, this. Oh well, don't say that in my chat. Okay. Anyways, apparently I was blocking some of Natalie news. So like,
Yes.
this is this is the things. This is not the part of this that I wanted to start on. Um,
Right.
it's a mess. It's fine. Everything's fine. Okay. So, Rascal, which is the project, sort of teacher journalism project by um, let me see the staff: Linda Codega, Rowan Zioli, and Chase Carter. Um, Launched this week, and it's great. It's very very good already. Um, a bunch of really great, like, kind of discrete teacher RPG stories, with previews, and there's a paywall for uh, $50 a year, which I think is a really really good pricing model. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and then there's also the announcements, which is really cool. These are fully available, and they're what's this?
Yeah. Oh
Like
wow.
full little uh bits. Like they basically. I actually really want to talk about the model for this because it's really impressive what they're doing. Um,
Absolutely, I do too.
yeah, let's talk a bit about the. Let's focus on like the website itself first, 'cause I think that's probably a good place to start. Um, so like those of you who don't know, like Lynn Codega was the TTRPG writer on, I believe it was Gizmodo, um, for quite a while. Broke the OGL story, the D&D 5e open games license story, and then was unceremoniously fired with a bunch of other people. Um, and started this up as kind of a replacement for the hole that was left in like TTRPG journalism.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just my brain isn't working. No, you actually
Uh,
go ahead.
yeah, I just think it's really cool. Like it's it I think the TTRPG, particularly the like larger TTRPG scene, not just D&D, is large enough to kind of support like a critical press outlet like this. Like a lot of hobbies and interests have spaces like this, and a lot of the TTRPG space is just people issuing press releases. And not that there's not press releases on Haskell, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
but just having a community supported space where there's actual journalism happening in our space is very cool.
yeah. Like I call the DOVECOTE a news and discussion show because it's not. I'm not doing journalism here, right?
Right.
I am like looking at the headlines, gathering stuff from like social media. I mean, maybe I'm doing a little bit of journalism, but I'm not like interviewing people. Well, I mean, I am. I'm not interviewing people related to the stories that I'm talking about.
Right.
Um, and I think I think it's good to have. It's helpful to me specifically to have more stuff where it's like people are actually going out and looking into things, um, because it means that there's more news, essentially. But more broadly, like I think it's helpful for the industry, for people making games, for people who want to play games, to have just big big stories about games. Um, Duck says Quinn's Quest is cool. Get them on. Uh, I don't believe that's going to happen. And I'll talk to you about it off stream, Duck. um, but yeah. At least in the near future. Sorry to distract, but yeah. It's very cool. You got stories about a conversation with Zoe Zephyr and Aaron Reed, which is really neat. Um, uh, Yeah, that's kind of their main big story here. Um,
Yeah.
Actual
I
play
also love
stuff.
the actual like critical review of the Marvel's actual play,
Yes.
where they were like, "Hey, this is, you know, ads masquerading as art," and like to actual have like a critical review of an actual play is something I've never seen. Uh, so that was really cool to see an actual play like actually regarded as a piece of media worthy of criticism.
Yeah, I
Uh,
feel like not to criticize Dicebreaker,
right.
but I think I kind of feel like Dicebreaker has had this requirement for like, or not requirement, but it's felt like whenever I see a critical story on Dicebreaker, it's like uh here's a bit about this thing, which is basically press copy, like which is basically like PR copy. Here's why I
Hmm.
don't like it, which is not PR
Yeah.
copy. Here's where you can get it, which is basically PR copy. And
Right.
I think the potential to be like, I fucking hate this thing
Hmm.
is uh really really good. I think that's a really good I think it's a really healthy thing for the industry. Like I, I hmm. Okay, I'm gonna like I'm gonna toe a line here. I think that there's a potential for it to be really cruel, and
Yes.
unnecessarily so. But I also think that there's a lot of space for it to be healthy and beneficial for the industry.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it seems like having did you listen to the Talk of the Table podcast with Lynn Lynn and um Rowan?
I unfortunately did not yet. I gotta get around to that.
Yeah. They talk a lot about how they're going to be more openly critical of bigger companies in the space, that they're never going to trash a small indie game designer and be like, this game blows. But they will be willing to be more critical of these larger products. um
Yeah,
so
that's good. And then we can talk about the announcements page. I think is really a neat,
yeah,
like, just really cool. um,
yeah, it is such a cool
okay, what's
thing. Warren
this?
Guard is on there, yeah. And being
It's
able to,
cute.
yeah, just have a community space where, because having some sort of press on your page where it shows that like people have read it. And you could even see there's a comment of there someone saying that they backed it because they
Yeah.
saw this article written up. And I backed Ritual Magic for Besties because I saw it on uh, this. So I think that this is a great place. I think I can openly admit this. I'm picturing the Reddit/r/RPG mods are not the regular viewers of your stream.
No, I don't think
But
so.
a fun trick I pulled was I spent about a month building up Reddit posting cred to look like I was an active community member, so I could post about Warren Guard on Reddit as it came out. Which posting on Reddit for a month is a good way to make yourself pretty miserable. Um, so having another outlet where you can have your game discoverable is huge.
Yeah. Uh, I'm really happy with this. It's also like this is bringing me back to my journalism school days because it was just like, uh, I opened it up and I was like, oh, this is just like a CMS. It's just like a
Yeah,
normal SCMS, and they're
right,
gonna make sure it's all good and there's not too many errors, and then just put it through. Um,
right.
and I think it's a really good. I hope that it's not too labor intensive for the three folks working Rascal. I really hope Rascal takes off so that it can become easier for them to do this.
Mhm.
Um, but I was very impressed with the documentation, how easily I was able to get involved in um uh what do you call it, how easily I was able to get access to this. And I highly recommend if you're making a game and you're like crowdfunding or you want to make announcements here. I highly recommend that you reach out um to Rascal
Yeah,
because you know I at least I didn't have any difficulty getting
right.
access. So
Did you reach out to any other press outlets for biotrophication?
I did not, unfortunately. I probably should have.
Well, I reached out for other outlets for Warren Guard and honestly got a lot of crickets. Rascal was got back to me right away. I reached out to Dorn, Dicebreaker and Polygon and all the outlets that exist and write about TTRPGs and didn't even get email back. But hearing from Rascal was excellent.
Yeah, very co-responsive. In fact, I might have someone from Rascal coming on in April for the Dovecote, which will be very
Oh, that
cool.
would be so great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've had a chance to meet Lynn, and Lynn is such another fantastic human.
yeah,
Yeah,
very cool person. Um,
yeah.
okay, so we have like an hour left, which I think is a good amount of time to do questions because we actually have quite a few of them.
Okay. Oh,
Um,
excellent.
yeah, so I'm gonna remember my birds this time. Uh,
Okay, you did it.
we're doing it properly for once. We're bringing in Apocrypha the Mailbird, little
Okay.
little little letter boy. There we go. I really should like write up some bios and pronouns for these for these guys. I think that'd be cute. Um, okay, so that's not related to this. Here we go. So these are actually from last week. These were questions for J Dragon, but
Okay.
we did not get to
I
them.
feel qualified to answer J Dragon's questions, so
Yeah. None of these are specifically like J Dragon questions, and I think they're
Mhm.
questions that you can answer as well.
Okay.
Um, these are from the specific list is for Jay. There's more that's just general. Um,
Okay.
but or well, not for Jay. That they were asked when Jay was here. It's like I
Yeah.
guess the um, yeah. These are from Goblin, who's a gold star VIP expert. We're sending out the Secret Service to protect them. A question asker for the show. Um,
Okay.
and the first question here is: do you know of any games that make PCs feel fragile without just getting that fact across by making things very lethal? Um, that's a
Um, I mean, there's well, not just making things very lethal. I was going to say 10 candles, but the whole point of 10 candles is that it's explicitly lethal.
right.
You know, as someone who is writing in Fate currently, the Fate feels lethal. When you look and you've got like your three, especially Fate Accelerated, you've got your three stress and your three conditions. And as those conditions build up, like, you knock off two of those conditions and you're like, oh shit, like I can take one hit left here. And the conditions actually have descriptions. They're things listed. When I run Warren Guard, it's like my dragon is rattled and has a shredded wing and has three stress. Like I've got to get out of here because one more thing, like my dragon is in rough shape.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for all Fate games.
I would also gesture towards. Okay, so I'm gesture towards one game that's out and one game that is that a friend is working on. Um, Blades in the Dark, I think, is very good at this. Like,
Mhm.
it takes a lot of beating for your character to die, but you kind of enter this slow death spiral with them, um,
Yeah,
where they get worse at doing things because they're injured, and then uh, they do things worse because they're injured, and they get injured more, um, which I think is
that's
really
an
fun.
excellent answer.
I would also gesture towards my friend Lilith Lilac Leviathan, also a former guest on the show. Her game Euphoria 2180, which is a um, D100 post-apocalyptic, weird, horny, uh, like adventure game. Um, which it's very hard to die in Euphoria 2180. Um, but every time you take damage while you're at zero wounds, every time you're at full wounds and you take damage, you roll a the resistance like vigor check, and then if you fail that check, then you roll an injury table, and like I believe it's like 2d5 and a 10 is your character dies. Um, so like you have to basically roll a critical for your character to die, but you're probably going to wind up with some sort of like horrible injury. um,
Yeah,
and it's great. I think like abstracting the means, like abstracting lethality, I think is a really good way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Um, oh, this is an interesting one. Uh, Question two: how could someone engage with TTRPGs as an art form if they aren't a writer but are a visual artist? Well, I guess there are kind of different angles to that. Do you want to answer this first? 'Cause I
Mhm.
feel like you probably have some thoughts on this.
I do absolutely. Yeah, I think my advice to you is if you want to engage in like creating TTRPGs from an artist perspective, that I will say bringing on an art director to Warren Guard has changed Warren Guard in some really interesting ways. That getting the art kind of real time as part of the process has uh because I started getting art coming in while I was still finishing playtests, and getting to see that art real time is really cool. So I would say like work with someone who's a writer and just the, a game coming out that would have art being drawn as it's being written would be such a cool, interesting creative experience. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think like being an artist, a visual artist, I think you have a lot to bring to RPGs. Like, and I would discount that. I think like you have an opportunity to basically shape the way that like games are like a game is promoted, right? Like
Mhm.
art is such an important element of like the visual identity of a game.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like from a community element, going on, having a social media presence, I think would be really helpful here. Having commission sheets, being like, hey, I really want to do art for TTRPGs. I think that tends to be like really helpful because I think like I'm often looking for people who when I'm thinking like I'm gonna like commission someone for some art, even though I do a lot of my own art myself, like
Mhm.
I'm often thinking I should get someone who has a vicinity to TTRPGs,
Right.
as opposed to just someone who I don't know, like I'm not really grabbing people from like the Splatoon fandom for my
Right.
art, um, and so I think just signaling that is a really good way to start that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm being told to hydrate by Venera program, so I'm gonna do that.
Okay. I'm gonna do that too. I'm forgetting to do that.
Okay, I just drank so much water, which tells you that maybe maybe I've not been drinking enough. Um, but that's okay. uh, let
You
me
have a
just.
heart of gold. Don't let them take it from you.
Hey, Critical K, thank you for the follow.
Yeah.
Welcome. Um, okay, we have drunk the water. Question three. This person has 6 questions, by the way, and they do this like every
Okay.
week. It's really good. Um,
Excellent.
do you have any queer RPGs you'd recommend as reading for someone who is perhaps interested in making one? And what do you think is the biggest thing one should take away from these works?
Did they
Hmm.
say queer RPG specifically?
Yes, yeah.
Um, Dream As- Dream Askew, 100%. If your Dream Askew by Avery Alder is I mean, it's the first Belonging Outside Belonging game, but I don't think anyone has matched the economy of moves that Avery managed to create in that game. Like, there's a reason everyone picked up the system and adopted it after Avery put it out. So yeah, read Dream Askew cover to cover. Also, Avery Alder, while I'm speaking about her, put out a collection of solo games called Variations on Your Body. Um, that is just a great exploration of games in general, and also has some essays in game design in it. So it's kind of cheating to say if you're interested in game design, read this book that has essays on game design. But uh, Variations on Your Body by Avery Alder as well.
Yeah, I would also say Monster Hearts by Avery Alter.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? Anything by Avery Alder, you really can't go wrong. Yeah, every like Monster Hearts 2 is again like uh I'm gonna tell one of Avery's anecdotes that has really stuck with me. Is Avery talks about the economies of each Monster Hearts 2 skin being based on the game Sentinels of the Multiverse, the card game, where each has its own mechanics and economy for how they're working. So the Fae in Monster Hearts is dealing with promises, and the Infernal is dealing with building up strings with their dark power, and all of them have the same tools in front of them, but are interacting with them in different ways. And like, yeah, I've told you I play a lot of Monster Hearts, so I've thought a lot about this. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. I think like this gets into my like annoying opinions in RPGs. Uh
Huh.
so like I think that like Avery I think Avery Alder, like the bakers and like some other folks set like really good foundations for like what is like what do romance, sex and sexuality look like in RPGs. Um
Hmm.
and like I kind of feel like I think like to some level or on some level like I think we haven't really seen the like full. I think because like the spiritual successors to those things were supposed to be like so marketable and like
Hmm.
so available to the public. I feel like we haven't seen the full extent of like what does extending the philosophies of those games look like. You know, what is what do queer games look like when it's about getting fucking nasty with it and like uh, getting nasty with it and maybe not even treating that nastiness as like evil in the text of the game like just having fun with shit that's kind of weird and fucked up and consensual, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And yeah, I think that honestly like I think it's Avery Alder's work and then it's like games that have yet to be written, um
Right.
or published. I think it's games that are being made right now
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. And Sapphic Space Pirates is pretty good too.
Oh yeah.
It's not a game that's currently out. That's um about that one specifically. Like, there's queer sex in it. It's definitely like a game that deals with sex and sexuality because it's a game about queer people. But it's really most deeply about uh, queer community and the way we form bonds with each other that aren't necessarily sexual. Um,
Good shit.
and yeah.
Yeah, so I guess my answer is make a beautiful queer RPG and
Uh-huh.
play games. Um and also like I don't know, fucking trying to think of any others. I don't know. Uh
I
like
can think of games where I that we're both talking around.
yeah. let's we'll
let's
move on.
let's move on.
Yeah. Um question 4. How much stock do you put into world building? Should one only leave the shadows and outlines of a world for the players of the TTRPGs to fill in, or do you find more value in fully formed worlds, or the opposite, scarce and fleeting worlds that suggest more than said? I think it depends on your game,
I think
probably.
it depends on your game, for sure. I think it's interesting that your project, Sapphic World, is such a fully designed world, um, with kind of it has the dark corners filled in, but that's like a cool part of it. And Warren Guard on the other um, Warren Guard on the other hand is specifically like there's things I lay out about the world, like it's a world that is not currently at war. It's a world that has never had a carceral state, things like that. But I definitely leave space for people to describe their own piece of the world, and still fit within the fiction. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like uh or agree. I it's like I think it's good. I think it's good that like games are different in this way, right?
Mhm.
Um because I've written games that are very like Biotraffication does not give you much detail to go off of. It's
Right.
it's a very it's very thin game. Um
Mhm.
same with some of my older stuff. Like the Third Empire is basically a world building game. Like I think generally I really like world building, but I think like I need to make sure that the system that I've built can carry the weight of world building. Um,
Yes.
like when I wrote recently my game Autopsy Feast, which I'm like is probably the next bigger thing I'm gonna be putting out. Um,
Okay.
I wrote it to be a very kind of systems like games that I could go in and be like, here's the locations on this planet that you can go to. And
Right.
I think that's kind of crucial.
Yeah. And I will say as a GM, like my personal GMing style does struggle with heavy world built games because I'm very much come from an improviser as a GM background. So not wanting to conflict with this heavily world built world can be a struggle for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm definitely similar, which is
yeah,
makes it weird that I like games that are so specific, you know.
right.
Um, yeah, I think a lot of it for me has been like playing Blades in the Dark with the built-in setting was like it's so much fun, and you kind of learn to love it. Uh, it's a fun way to play, but also like if a game is like you're GMing some space pirates, uh, and they're going on an adventure, and you're gonna make up all sorts of fucked up planets. I'm like, hell yeah, yes I am. Uh, like I really like both approaches. Yeah. What else do we got? What's the biggest pitfall newer creators fall into in RTGs? What's the easiest way to avoid that? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Trying to write a 100, 200 page game as your first game.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely seen newer creators fall into that trap. Um,
Don't write 1,000-page fantasy
right.
heartbreaker. That's my other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I I'd say not playing early. I think there's a lot of writers who write the full game and then start playtesting it. But like I'll have like three mechanics on a piece of paper and start rolling dice, even with just myself, and be like, I do this, and then I roll the dice and be like, how did, and then this happens, and um, yeah, I think start playtesting early, even with yourself, um, is another good piece of advice.
Yeah, that's really smart. I've seen Jay in the Seven Part Pack Discord, running like a little playtest of like, a mechanic for one of the wizards, and I think that's a really great
Mhm.
idea. Just today for a thing that I can't yet talk about, but for a thing that I'm working on with some other folks, I I one of the other people's working on it with me was like, hey, uh, it's a war game, I guess I'll say, and
Mhm.
it has kind of like a Magic Draft style character selection thing. Um, and so she was just like, "Hey, you want to do a draft?" And so me, her, and another one of my friends did a draft, and it was very fun. And that was all we did. We just made characters, and eventually, once the rest of the game is ready to play, we'll play that with those characters. So yeah, I totally agree. I think playing early and often is a really great way to do design.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Question 6 from Goblin. How do you think other games could be represented in TTRPGs? How could one abstract football or street racing or ping pong and make it more than a story of winners and losers? Isn't there a game that's like that?
I just immediately thought of Grant Howitt's game. Shoot, what's it called? Grant Howitt has a Fast and the Furious pastiche game that you play with those wind-up cars that you pull back and let go.
Right, yeah. I
Uh,
remember that.
um, that was my first thought, but yeah,
There's that game that my good friend Polychromatic had art in one of these sports games, and I don't remember the name of it. Um, I guess the point is that there's a lot of them. There's like
right.
a lot of. Hang on, I'll literally just tag. If you want answers on this, uh, I don't really know because I haven't done that. Um, but you have a full cadre of sports based TTRPGs to peruse and perhaps learn a thing or two from in that regard.
Yeah.
Kobe or Yeet? A high school basketball one-page teacher RPG.
The other game I was thinking of that I backed like way back in the day and available on itch.io is Derby Drama by Horror Check.
Oh,
It's a roller derby TTRPG that really well captures roller derby's mechanics as someone who was a skater and then an official for that sport.
hell yeah. I had a the director of my LGBTQ center at the college that I went to was deep in Derby, which was very cool. Um, okay, that's all of Goblin's questions. We have more from
Okay.
other people.
Okay. Excellent.
More from Duck. Oh boy. Okay, this is the joke one. Okay, I'll ask this one because it's funny. The subject is this is the email for the Dungeon Cast podcast, right? Hello, fellow 5e enjoyers. How do we balance unarmed combat without making monks even more racist? Thanks, Duck's 5e playing alter ego, Dork. Um, I don't know. it's, it's a very funny question. Listen,
It's a very funny question. I tried hard. Someone asked me, a really well-meaning friend today who is a backer of Warren Guard asked me a D&D question today, thinking I would have an answer, and I was just like, I don't know. um, I've lobotomized the part of my brain that thinks about D&D nowadays.
see, I here's the problem. I was like,
Uh-huh.
I don't remember anything about D&D 5e. I don't remember it. And then I played Baldur's Gate 3, and I was like, uh, okay, well, Shadowheart, she's a high wisdom score, but she's a half elf. So her firebolt that she starts with is actually an intelligence based attack. So its chance to hit is actually fairly low, um, and it's not great. um, yeah. So sometimes you remember D&D 5e. That's my answer. And
Yeah.
okay, actual questions from Duck.
Okay.
Um, fuck, I sent all my other good questions to the Dungeon Cast by mistake. Best type of dragon breath effect from Duck.
Best Dragon Breath effect. So way back in the day, speaking about things from Wizards of the Coast, um, I read the Weatherlight series of books was a favorite book series of mine, and in that the end of the Weatherlight saga, they pull the primeval dragons and make them they reanimate the primeval dragons, and one of them just s- roars a word of death in like every language that just decays and degenerates everything,
Uh,
which is kind of what I based my Black Dragon's power on in Warren Guard. But yeah, definitely the coolest one.
um, I like not to pat my own back a bit, but
Uh-huh.
Sapphic Worlds Wyvern type dragons have
Uh-huh.
a list of uh like gaseous breaths that they can let
Uh-huh.
out, including I'll just read this list. Sleep gas, which makes everyone drowsy. Lust gas, which makes most horny. Smog, which makes everyone cough and wheeze. Mist, which makes everyone forget where you were. Moths, which eat clothes at a supernatural rate, and fairy dust, which confuses everyone with fluttering lights. I think people should get weird with it. Is basically my my philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
maybe I didn't get weird enough with it in Warren Guard. You're making me doubt myself.
I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's fun, and sometimes I feel like having those like fundamentals can be those like
Yeah.
fundamental elements can be better for like I think especially with
Yeah.
what Warren Guard is doing, where it's trying to be very focused on like both the characters riding the dragons and
Right.
the the kind of dragon dragon flight and like the specifics
Yeah.
of that. I think having basics is pretty
Yeah.
uh
And something that's really cool in the game is fate combat is often problem solving.
mhm.
It's finding creative ways to come up with problems, and each of the dragons has different breath. Like a green dragon breathes a stream of pollen that blooms into thorny flowering vines. and an orange dragon spits bolts of lava, and having these different things like gives people different arsenals to solve problems in different ways, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, those sound like perfectly good breaths to me. I
Yeah,
love a good weird breath.
yeah.
Um, I had a fellowship character in a play by post that I did for a while who had poison breath, but I flavored it as like alcohol. Um,
Okay.
and that was really fun. I mean, it definitely was. Listen, sometimes you have kobolds, and sometimes you make kobolds drink your spit, etc. Um, Duck wants to ask another question. Which dragon in Warrenguard would Kain Fated Dragon hit on successfully? Okay, this is a multi-level
Okay. Yeah,
question.
I don't understand that question.
Okay, so Kain,
So
let me find a picture of Kain. Kain Fated Dragon is a Sapphic World NPC,
okay.
uh, who's a big red dragon inspired by Grigory from Dragon's Dogma. I don't know if you know
Huh, I don't.
Grigory. Um, Kain looks like this.
Okay.
Um, and he's big and he's red. Um, so I guess the question is, what color dragon would successfully hit on Kain? It's
I love a big small pairing. And orange dragons are the smallest dragon species in Warrenguard, but they're natural troublemakers. They're like the cats of dragons. They want to cause problems. Whenever I play an orange dragon, they talk like this. And are just generally like rascals and problem solvers. And I just see a tiny little rascal uh, with unearned confidence coming up on Kane Faded Dragon.
yeah, I
Uh,
can see this. Actually, I
yeah.
have a fiction question for Warrenguard.
Uh
Um,
huh.
are dragons in Warrenguard like sapient, non-sapient, or is that left up to the kind of
Uh,
group?
so they're sapient and they have a psychic connection with their rider. So them and their
Well,
rider kind of share a mind, so you can telepathically talk to your dragon. You also can't keep secrets from your dragon, but your dragon can keep secrets from you. Um, a dragon's mind is just a little bit stronger than a human's, and they're able to, keep that separation. Uh, so humanity doesn't fully understand like dragons' ways and customs. Um, but yeah, it's very fun getting to play all the dragons because I think I do a good job of like nailing like very quick archetypes of what these dragons are like, and the interplay between riders and dragons is one of my favorite parts of Warnguard. Another fun thing about the game is you don't get to pick your dragon.
mhm.
Your dragon picks you. It's randomly rolled after you pick your rider archetype. So you could have, the outsider, which is the sexy bad boy dragon rider, with a pink dragon who's fun and playful and just wants to have a good time. Or you have your fresh face who's like the baby rider who's new out of the thing, who has like a terrifying black dragon that just just wants to kill and destroy. And it's very fun having those balances with each other.
Yeah, that's really neat. I love just kind of the interplay of all the mechanics that Warrenguard is playing with. It's
Yeah.
really neat. Uh, I'm receiving a question from Grief. Vital to know the kissability status of dragons in Warrenguard.
That is not in the core book. Uh, I do welcome people writing their own home rules and putting them out on itch, their own like splats and expansions for kissability of dragons. But that is not something that Warren Guard um, deals with in the text.
Very understandable.
Yeah,
Because that's a whole other can of worms.
right. I
Um,
do have this fiction. I haven't written it yet, but the idea is that dragons basically spend their adolescence, their like early life and adolescence as being ridden, And then after their rider dies, after, you know, however many years, that's when they go off and they mate and have more dragons, and they get to go live this like wild free retirement life. Um, but I haven't actually written that yet. That is lore that is in my to be written pile.
Yeah. So you cite specifically the. I'm just asking you questions now, which is allowed.
Yeah,
You cite specifically the Dragon Riders of Perth series. I actually have not
yeah,
read. Um, uh, I know like I've watched the How to Train Your Dragon movies, which I know are like
yeah.
loosely based on those books. How do you feel about those movies?
Uh, the How to Train Your Dragon movies, I think, are very fun. Like there is a lot of DNA from those movies in Warren Guard. The books are fun too. Like they're loosely based or a different thing. If you're looking for a piece of Dragon Rider media, and this is a piece of media that really strongly inspired Warren Guard that not enough people are talking about. Like I did a poll on the backer kit, like what's your favorite piece of dragon riding media? And I'm the only one who's voted for this. It's the Aurelian Cycle by Rosaria Munda.
Hmm.
It's a book that deals with um, basically a group of dragon riders immediately following a revolution that they've won. They're the first generation of dragon riders after this regime of dragon lords who like ruled over as like a terrible aristocracy has fallen, and this is a new group of like democratically chosen dragon riders, but you still see like, hey, this post-revolution world is also not perfect, even if it's better than what came before. And it also like deals with dragon riders as kind of fighter pilots, in a really cool way, like the culture of dragon riders in that world.
Hell yeah,
Uh, it's a very cool book series.
sounds
I
awesome.
strongly recommend it.
Doc is asking, mini question: any inspiration taken from my Father's Dragon book series?
I have never heard of My Father's Dragon. I will have to check out that
I
series.
see.
I'm always I've had people apparently a huge blind spot on my piece of Dragon Rider media was the Tremere series. Which after I read about it, I was like, oh, like of course, I just missed this series because I had a straight male protagonist, and that didn't interest me. But it's definitely like a huge blind spot in my thing. But dragon, my father's dragon. What is this?
Yeah, interesting. By the
Okay,
way, folks can still send emails to darlingdemonclips@gmail.com if you want us to answer. We
yeah,
still have like a fucking half hour. Although, like, if we don't get anything, we'll probably just end early. Um,
okay, yeah. I will
uh,
check out this. Apparently, there's a Netflix movie um, based on my father's dragon. I will need to check that out.
huh, interesting. Um, yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I suppose, I mean, Netflix, yeah. Um, we are ending like around the time that we normally end. It's just we started earlier or
Okay.
started later, which I think is okay.
I
Um,
can talk more about Warren Guard. I have so
yeah,
many
please
like
tell us.
stories to
Let's
tell
talk more about
about
Warren
this
Guard.
game. Yeah. So now I immediately draw a blank on what I
Here,
wanted to
we're adding
talk
a
about.
fourth section to the show about dragons.
Okay, excellent. Uh so yeah, I think a really cool thing about designing Warren Guard is there's only 5 rider archetypes in the core game. Now of course we've unlocked one written by Sebastian Huet. We're
Hmm.
hopefully gonna write unlock a new one written by Jay Dragon. But the rider archetypes, I wrote 5 archetypes. I was like, okay, now time to write the 6. And then I looked at what I wrote, and I felt like I had summed up the extent of human relationships in 5. And I was like, I don't know, like I can't write one that doesn't take space from another. Um, and I think, have you ever been in a game design pickle like that where you like feel like you should have more of something, but you did so well on the ones you wrote that you can't?
I'm like that with I mean, I'm like that with basically Sapphic World's equivalent of that. I think, um, because Sapphic World has the base book of Sapphire World just can have like maybe four of the titles, which are kind of its playbooks.
Okay.
And like I've written uh what is it, like 11? How many are there? There's a lot. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. I didn't write that one. I wrote 10. Um, but like the thing that I'm realizing, that might not sound like that much, but it's like, or that might sound like a lot, but it's not that many for
Mhm.
like how big the game is. Um,
Right.
and like how I'm kind of splitting up early stuff, where it's like a lot of stuff is just a lot of game, like a lot of the books or releases are just not gonna have any titles in them.
Mhm.
um,
Right.
but like people have been writing them, and I think the thing that I realized was like, oh shit, uh, it's hard to write. Like, there are a lot of things in Sapphire World where it's hard to write because like
Mm.
if you not to get too deep into it, but like if you make
No,
like
please get deep into it.
if you make like a kind, which is like a type of character, like a mystical form, kind of like a race or a species equivalent, ancestry type vibe, um, you then have to be like, where do these people live, and who are the characters who represent this kind. um, if you write a subculture, same thing, like who are these characters, like where is this community. Um, and the thing that I've realized is like titles are actually the thing where you can just keep fucking writing them forever, because people
Mhm.
just keep making new ones that like completely take me by surprise. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I feel that. I feel like um, I hope that you're having a similar experience with the guest writers.
Yeah, I have been blown away by the things that they've pitched me. I'm not sharing them quite yet because that's I'm saving for
Mhm.
backer updates. But yeah, the things that they've pitched me, I've been like, I did not think of that. Like you're approaching this game from a direction that I could not have done. Which I think Warren Guard is a game with my name on the cover, and it's very much a game that comes from my creative voice. But so seeing other people approach that thing, uh, really, it's mind-boggling. I think one of the coolest things as a game designer is getting to see other people touch your stuff, because game design is not just something that is yours, but like getting to see other people play your game that without you, uh, is one of the coolest things as a game designer. And getting to see other people touch things I've written for the first time has been an equally awesome experience.
Yeah, it's very like I've done some of that recently with some of my work, and it's been like, oh, a, this stuff works really well, and b, like, wow, this is really humbling and really pleasant.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
We're getting a question in the chat from
Mhm.
Clockwork Tuba. When I design, I make sure there's no options I personally would never want to choose. Did you do a similar thing with the dragons, where they all made as something you would be happy to have?
I think so. Like I think some of the dragons, like I don't think that there's a dragon where it's like, shit, I got the pink dragon, or uh anything like that. Like I think all the dragons, like, I made cool in their own way. I also think I one of my favorite things, compliments you can get as a game designer is, oh, this is such a hard choice when you've got a list of things to
Mhm.
choose from. And I think uh, yeah, I think all the dragons are something I would be happy to have. I'm getting to play in a Warren Guard actual play. That's actually what I was doing right before this, was doing our session 0 for that, where I'm gonna get to play my game for the first time,
Oh hell
uh,
yeah!
not as a GM, on stream. And I got a red dragon and was just so stoked. Which red dragon is, I I personally identify as a bronze dragon rider or a green dragon rider, in my own text. Bronze dragons are the biggest and the strongest, but they're just kind of big, lovable oafs that break things. And as a giant woman, I relate with that. And then green dragons, they're the dogs of dragons. They're just incredibly like kind and sweet and always want to be near you. And Green dragons, all of them have like a flaw. Every dragon has like some sort of drawback, and green dragons is that they will defend their rider at any cost.
Aw, that's good.
So like they won't let their rider take a hit. Um, uh, so yeah.
Love that.
Uh,
Being that you're kind of going into playing your own game, for the
uh-huh.
first time as a player rather than GM, uh, how are you finding like a thing that I've encountered a bit with my own work and some other folks who I've play tested for is like kind of trying to avoid co-GMing, right?
Yes.
How are you finding that?
Hard.
Hmm.
Um, it's yeah, I'm very much trying to sit back and see how they run it, but there was a couple times during our session 0 where I had to be like, actually, it's this, or hey, you guys probably haven't read all the world lore, so let me make sure that you know about this thing, um, because I don't expect actual players to have read all the pages of my book. Um, Someone wants to know about sci-fi dragons.
Yeah, talk about sci-fi dragons.
Sci-fi dragons has been the number one thing people have been asking for out of Warren that we don't uh, that isn't currently in the book, and it's made me think that like if we pass J Dragon stretch goal, my next stretch goal might be something I write myself, which is an alternate setting for Warren which is sci-fi based. I just brought Val Ayala onto the team, who writes as VM Ayala. And
Oh,
Val, they are currently they're a science fiction fantasy writer, and I brought them on specifically to write some lore for the world. Um, and they are actually in the process of writing a book about space dragons. And I was like, could we turn this into like a Warren Guard setting? And they were like, maybe. Um, so there may be as a further stretch goal, Space Dragons, Warren Guard 2077. Yes.
hell
Uh,
yeah.
we've also had people asking for like cyberpunk settings. I'm sure you've played Wickedness, right?
I have not actually. My friend
Oh
Molly
my
has been trying to get me
god,
to play Wickedness for a
Wickedness!
while.
Wickedness is another game that like has changed my brain and the way I wrap around games. And Maisie M. Basalik, who wrote it, is stretch goal we've already unlocked. Is going to be writing chapters for Warren Guard. Um, but um, no, that game has alternate settings as one of the things in it. It basically just reskins everything to be like, instead of being like a vaguely fantasy world coven, we're now a modern world coven, or we're now like a cyberpunk coven. Um, and that's in the core books, which is such a cool thing. Um,
Yeah, that rules. I love alternate settings for things. I think it's such a cool thing to do. What was Oh yeah, my friend Duck's game, which is a kind of large module for his game to change, which is a transformation game. He's making an like Island of Doctor Moreau inspired supplement, and that's gonna have like a medieval setting and a sci-fi setting as stretch goals. I think it's always very fun. Um,
yeah. When I originally wrote Sapphic Space Pirates, I ran one playtest of it like this, but it was always my dream is that people would take everything in it as allegory, because Sapphic Space Pirates is really just being about a queer community in being separated currently. And I just always had this idea that like, actually, this is a game about a bunch of queer people in a van and the run from the law, but it's through this lens, and um, no one ever ran it that way, but it's something that I think about a lot, um, and had the goal for when I originally wrote that game.
yeah, that's really neat. I used to
Yeah.
draw a lot of fucking for my D&D 5e my sci-fi D&D 5e campaign. I used to draw a lot of like sci-fi dragons in Google
Okay.
Draw of all things. That's how I used to do my art because it was like I don't know. It was what I had available. Like I didn't have. I had a Chromebook and a trackpad, and I was doing art on a trackpad. um, yeah. Let me see if there are more questions here. All right, we got questions from Piper,
Okay.
Venera program in my email. Uh, so Venera asks, I see that dragons are commonly sorted or described based on color classifications. Um, so there are two questions here related to that topic. What
Uh-huh.
other sorts of organization methods do you think dragons could lovingly inhabit?
Um,
Oh.
yeah, Fireborn, the Aurelian Cycle is a book series that specifically does not classify them based on color. They're more like species based. There's the skyfish and the Aurelians, and I forget the third species now, but they're more like allegories for types of planes than anything. There's the dragons that are like the big tough bombers, and then you have your like nimble fighters, and then you have your kind of fast interceptors. Um, uh, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I stole the dragon sorted by color directly from Pern.
Mhm.
I don't lay over like what their colors correspond to with what my colors correspond to. Um, but I think that one thing I love in a game is when you get something to identify to. Like it's something I think that is very strong in Magic the Gathering is, when you build a commander deck, you get to kind of in a way like role play as that color, and the way that they play, and having something so simple to lay your correspondent, like I am a, I described it earlier, like I think I'm a bronze dragon rider or a green dragon rider.
Mhm.
Having something to identify yourself with that way is something I think is really cool in media. um,
Yeah, definitely great. Anytime people mention veiny dragons, you hear Joey from Yu-Gi-Oh.
yeah,
Um,
Kay is one of my playtesters who so badly wants art of baby dragons, and
Good.
I've been people have been teasing Kay of being like, "Oh, baby dragons are just gross slimes. They don't get cute until they get older," or like things like that. But what Kay doesn't know is like baby dragons are probably already funded. I need to
Right.
check with Abby, but we probably have a hatching scene already funded in the game. So I will tell you that, Kay. That's why it's not listed as a stretch goal, is because we've, I think, funded all the art we originally laid out that we want to have for the game. Um, so yeah,
Hell yeah. That rules. We love
yeah,
baby.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I wrote I I tried my hand at writing some pieces of prose, which is not my strength as a writer. Um, uh, in the world, and I think I wrote a pretty good piece on dragon hatchings and what those experiences are like for the humans there. Um, but I really want to have an illustration with that scene of a bunch of riders at a hatching. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that sounds like a really fun scene to have. I
yeah,
love. I think it's really cool that you're going for a chapter approach to this. I think that's like the best way to go with this.
yeah, yeah. That was. I think that was when because I was writing belonging outside belonging, but I was like, this is a GM system. Like when I laid Fate on top of it, I was like, this doesn't work without a GM. And then I was like, what can I do? And I've run a lot of Uzebas. I ran it as part of an actual play. I ran it for Games on Demand quite a bit. Um, and just having that, like, this is how you play the session, like laid out as a GM, just makes your life like so easy. And like, I was like, how can I do that, but not writing 100 different systems like Jay did? Um,
Right. uh,
Another thing I stole from Jay, shamelessly, was unlockable chapters.
mm,
The game has each archetype of rider has an unlockable chapter that you can unlock through leveling up. Um, So, for example, the fresh face, who's our baby rider, has an archetype where they're feeling homesick, and because they have a psychic connection with their dragon starts to feel homesick.
Aw.
And then because the dragons communicate, all the dragons feel homesick, so all the riders start feeling homesick.
Oh, that's really fun.
So it's just like dealing with a bout of homesickness. Um, or we have one for the ace, who's like the hotshot rider, who everyone like who like is out to prove something, where they get a statue commission for them for something they didn't do, um, uh, and they have to like deal with their fame in that way. Uh, so yeah, not only are there chapters, but there are unlockable chapters.
Yeah, and on the topic of dragon types that aren't color,
Uh-huh.
Venera program says environmental ones like swamp dragons or cloud dragons can be really cool, but
Yeah,
do you think there's more absurd ones you could frame around, like a rhombus dragon or a nearby dragon? I love like geometry and distance dragons. That's really fun.
yeah, yeah. A nearby dragon is definitely very different from a faraway dragon.
Right.
Um, uh, what's the best dragon I can think of? Um, I mean, an up dragon is pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Uh, you know.
I
Uh,
like um uh acetone dragon.
okay.
If you got
Yeah.
nail polish on, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, we got a question in the chat from Grief. Um, one of our favorite pieces of writing advice we've gotten is make your art for like 30 freaks at most. Is there any specific people or group in mind behind Warren
Uh, Warren Guard, like I said, Sapphic Space Pirates was about my roller derby team. Warren Guard is about a specific workplace I was in my 20s.
Hmm.
I don't want to share more than that about the workplace for personal reasons, but they're just the relationships in that place and seeing how these bonds built between people who would not have chosen each other. Uh, there's a lot of that in Warren Guard. This like found family of being forced together. Um, yeah. Also, when I was writing it, I definitely wrote it. I think also like we talked about good playtest groups and Jay's article about good playtest groups, but I also think that part of it was I wrote it for some of my playtesters. Like there were definitely things where I was like, oh, this is going to be for Kay, for example, when I wrote the outsider, who's a sexy bad boy, I was like, oh, this is the K class, so let me put something in there that's specifically for K. Um, uh, and yeah, I definitely think I kind of wrote it for my playtest group to a certain extent, which now that I'm saying that might not have made them the best playtesters. I probably should have expanded my playtest group larger. But no, I think I've gotten to run the game for random strangers as well, and um, yeah, I think writing a game for 30 weirdos. I also think not just 30 freaks, but write the game for yourself.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
um, one of the choices in Sapphic Space Pirates is I was writing the muscle, who's like your butch lesbian, like, or can be like a muscle femme, but their whole thing is that they like picking things up and putting them down again. And I originally wrote abs as one of the traits they can have, and then I was like,
Oh, sorry, you cut out a
fuck
bit. What
abs.
was? Oh,
Oh,
abs.
I
Yeah.
originally wrote abs as a trait you could have, and then I was like, fuck abs, like a soft stomach. I like
Yeah.
scratched it out and
Tummy.
wrote a soft stomach, and like it immediately made the game for me. Um, and like I think write a game that you want, that you wish existed, and don't try to write the game for some unnamed. Don't write the game for the people on Reddit or like what like some like random straight cis guy is gonna think. Like write the game for you.
Yeah,
And,
I made the mistake of showing Sapphic World to a heterosexual recently,
uh-huh.
to a cishet, and it was interesting because they were like, this art isn't sexy, and it's like,
Uh-huh.
you don't understand that like a woman in a jacket running a
y-
like a burning hot knife along the like crease of your corset and tearing it apart with it is actually one of the is more hot than like a woman with her boobs out, right?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that is so true. Is not
Yeah.
letting the not letting like both the people in your head and also the the literal people who tell you uh things that are wrong
Right.
get in your head.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, well, I don't think we have anything else.
Okay.
I'm rather hungry, so I think we're gonna wrap up here.
Okay. Let's go
Um,
ahead and wrap up.
yeah, thank y'all for watching. Thank you so much for being on, Natalie. Do you have anything else besides Warren Guard? Well, actually, here, I'm gonna put Warren Guard in one more time. Do you have anything else besides Warren Guard that you'd like to promote?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of Warren Guard, but I'm on an actual play series on Critical Misses on Friday nights where we're playing Warren Guard. I'm GMing that. That is at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Critical Misses. And then this Saturday, I'm going to be on Roll for Felicity at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, playing Warren Guard. I'll be a player there where I'm playing Dorothea Blaze Rider, the old timer with boots that echo and like slight graying hair. Speaking of things that are sexy to queer
Good.
people,
What was the name of
uh,
the streamer? Second one?
Roll for Felicity.
Roll for Felicity. Cool.
And then lastly, I have one more stream I'm going to be on. This I built a crazy press schedule for myself. Um, but this Thursday, I'm going to be on 7:30. I'm going to be on Valiant Dorian's new Dicey Banter show, which is going to be another talk show. Val is going to interview me about Warren Guard. So if you've got even more questions you didn't manage to get in the stream that you want to hear me talk to a trans creator about, you can ask your questions there.
Do you have a link to that last one? Because I'm having a little bit of
Uh, Let me grab it. Hold on just a moment. Uh, I know Val's Twitter,
cool.
so I can grab it out of. Then I go to your card, and then I go to your Twitch. Oh, sorry, it's not Valiant Dorian. They stream as Otso Spirit Bear,
Okay.
OTSO Spirit Bear. Their name is Valiant Dorian, but their stream channel is Otso Spirit
Let's
Bear.
see if I can find that. Here we go. Located.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so give those folks a follow so that you can be ready for when Natalie gets on stream with them. And yeah, thank you again. You've been a wonderful host, Natalie. Wonderful
Oh.
guest, even specifically. um,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was a really excellent time. I've had a fantastic time being on your show.
Thank you. We're going to raid. Let's raid someone doing RPG stuff. We're gonna raid
Yeah.
Explicit Corpse Presents, who's doing
Okay.
they're streaming Monster of the Week for
Okay.
a heart health charity,
Okay.
Heart Sport. So yeah, go check that out. And thank you all for watching. And take care. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Remember, if you don't like what you see, you can change it. It's up to you, really. Goodbye, good luck, and have fun